Cyber laws in India. Introduction. Crime is as old as civilization itself, from theft and fraud to treason and espionage. Human history is filled with stories of wrongdoing and the attempts by societies to prevent, punish, or reform those responsible. But with the rapid advancement of technology and the global shift towards digital system, a new and a more complex form of crime has emerged, that is, cybercrime. These crimes take place not only in physical spaces but in virtual realms, using computer networks and digital communication channels as both the medium and the weapon. In the last 2 decades, India has witnessed an unprecedented technological transformation. Computers, mobile phones, and the internet have become integral to daily life, business, governance, and communication. From online banking and digital payments to e-governance and e-commerce, nearly every activity today has a digital counterpart. While this digital revolution has made life faster and more convenient, it has also created new vulnerabilities. Information can be stolen, systems can be hacked, identities can be faked, and financial frauds can be executed without criminal ever being physically present. This new breed of crime, that is cybercrime, poses significant challenges to traditional law enforcement mechanisms. Crimes that once occurred within physical boundaries are now committed across continents in mere seconds. The offender and the victim might live in different countries, and the evidence might exist in the form of electronic data stored on remote servers. Such crimes often involve complex technical methods that demand specialized understanding, sophisticated investigative tools, and a completely different legal framework. Recognizing this emerging threat, the Indian government realized that traditional laws such as Indian Penal Code (IPC) and Indian Evidence Act 1872 were inadequate to deal with such offences involving computers, networks, and digital communications. Crimes like hacking, phishing, and data theft, or the circulation of obscene materials online, could not be effectively prosecuted under existing legal provisions. There was an urgent need for the legislation, especially for addressing the misuse of technology and defining the rights and liabilities of users, service providers, and law enforcement authorities in cyberspace. This recognition gave birth to cyber laws in India, the legal framework designed to regulate digital activities, promote e-commerce, ensure cybersecurity, and punish offenders using technology for unlawful acts. The foundation of this framework lies in the Information Technology Act 2000, which was India's first law specifically dedicated to cyber matters. It was later strengthened by the Information Technology Amendment Act 2008, which updated and expanded the law in the light of new technological challenges. Together, these laws aim to balance innovation with regulation, ensuring that digital technology remains a tool for progress rather than an instrument of crime. Cyber laws are not merely about punishment. They are about creating trust in the digital ecosystem, trust that allows citizens to transact online, businesses to operate securely, the governments to deliver the service efficiently. India's digital growth story is incomplete without acknowledging the crucial role of these laws. They represent the country's determination to adapt to technological changes, protect its citizens in the virtual world, and ensure that the internet remains a safe and secure space for all of us. Origin and the need for cyber laws in India. To understand the birth of cyber laws in India, we must revisit the global developments of 1990s. During the decade, globalization accelerated, and with it came the digitization of commerce, communication, and governance. Emails replaced postal letters, databases replaced paper records, and online trading began replacing traditional market systems. Businesses started conducting transactions electronically, and the governments began adopting computer-based systems for their administration. However, while technology was rapidly changing, legal systems across the world were still operating on frameworks designed for paper-based communications and physical evidence. Contracts required handwritten signatures, legal notices required postal delivery, and records were stored in the ledgers and the files. The question soon arose: how can an electronic document, something intangible and stored in computer, have the same legal validity as a paper document? To address this global challenge, the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, UNICITRAL, introduced the Model Law on Electronic Commerce in 1996. This model law encouraged nations to recognize electronic records and communications as legally valid form of documentation. The United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution in January 1997 recommending all the member states to adopt laws aligned with UNICITRAL model. This marked the beginning of a global movement toward digital legislation. India, which was rapidly embracing computerization in both government and private sector, felt an urgent need to keep pace with these international developments. By the late 1990s, Indian businesses were increasingly engaging in e-commerce, software exports were booming, and even banking institutions were beginning to digitalize their operations. But Indian law did not recognize the electronic records or digital signature. There was a clear legal provision to punish the person for hacking into a computer or stealing digital data. The absence of a proper legal framework was creating uncertainty and discouraging investors and international partners from engaging in electronic transactions. The absence of a proper legal framework was creating uncertainty and discouraging investors and international partners from engaging in electronic transactions involving Indian entities. Moreover, the internet was becoming a part of everyday life. Email communications, online ticket booking, digital payments, and emerging online marketplaces like eBay and Amazon were changing how people interacted and did business. With this digital expansion came the rise of cyber offenses, online fraud, credit card scams, software piracy, and even the spread of obscene and defamatory content through electronic means. It became evident that India's traditional legal tools were insufficient to deal with such crimes that could be committed anonymously and across borders. The Indian government recognized the gravity of the situation. It was not just about preventing crimes, it was also about ensuring trust in digital commerce and governance. A secure digital ecosystem was essential to support the economic growth and promote technological innovation. Therefore, India decided to enact a new comprehensive law that would provide a legal recognition to electronic communication and safeguard users against cyber offenses. This resulted in the Information Technology Act 2000, a landmark legislation that provided a strong legal foundation for India's digital transformation. It was passed by both the houses of parliament and received the President's assent on 9 June 2000, coming into force on 17 October 2000. The preamble of the Act clearly states its purpose: to grant legal recognition to electronic transactions and to facilitate e-governance and e-commerce by allowing people to use digital means for official communication, contracts, and records. It also sought to amend certain existing laws. including Indian Penal Code (IPC), the Indian Evidence Act, the Bankers Book Evidence Act, and the Reserve Bank of India Act, so that they could accommodate digital records and processes. The passage of this act made India one of the early adopters of cyber legislation in Asia. It marked the beginning of a new legal era where electronic documents, online communication, and digital signatures were given the same legal weight as their traditional counterparts. The Information Technology Act 2000. The Information Technology Act 2000, popularly called as IT Act, is the cornerstone of India's cyber law framework. It was enacted to provide legal recognition to electronic transactions and to establish mechanisms to prevent and punish cybercrimes. The Act contains 13 chapters and 90 sections covering everything from digital signatures and e-records to offences, penalties, and procedures for adjudication. At its heart, the IT Act is built on four major pillars. First, the recognition of electronic documents and digital signatures. Second, legal recognition of electronic e-governance. Third, identification of cyber offences and the corresponding penalties. And fourth, the establishment of authorities for regulation, adjudication, and enforcement. When the Act was introduced, its primary objective was to facilitate e-commerce and e-governance by making electronic records legally acceptable. For example, contracts executed through emails or online communications were recognized as valid under the law as long as they met specific conditions. Similarly, electronic filings of documents with government agencies was permitted, paving the way for online governance. Another key feature was the introduction of digital signatures, a method to authenticate electronic documents and ensure their integrity. A digital signature created through encryption technology verified that the document has not been tampered with and that it indeed came from the authorized sender. The Act laid down the concept of certifying authorities, licensed entities that could issue digital signatures, certificates to individuals or organizations, ensuring trust in electronic communication. The IT Act also defined a wide range of cyber offences and prescribed penalties for them. These included unauthorized access to computer system, data theft, spreading viruses, and publishing obscene content online. It was one of the first pieces of Indian legislation to recognize that information stored in digital form could be as valuable as physical property, and its theft or destruction should attract legal consequences. Another significant provision of the Act was its extraterritorial jurisdiction. This meant that the law applied not only within India but also to the offences committed outside India, as long as the Act involved a computer or network located in India. This global reach was necessary because cybercrimes often transcend national borders. The IT Act also established a system for adjudication of disputes and compensation. Instead of requiring victims to file traditional lawsuits, the Act empowered the government appointed adjudicating officers to hear cases related to data theft or damages to computer systems. Additionally, it created Cyber Appellate Tribunal, which served as an appellate authority for decisions made by such adjudicating officers. However, despite being a groundbreaking law, the IT Act of 2000 faced criticism for its limitation. The law was drafted at the time when India was just beginning to adopt the internet. It did not anticipate the explosion of social media, mobile applications, or sophisticated cyber threats like phishing, scams, and online radicalization. As a result, several aspects of cyber crimes were either loosely defined or missing altogether. For instance, the Act did not deal with issues such as privacy violations, identity theft, or data protection in a detailed manner. Moreover, the enforcement mechanisms were weak and there was little clarity about the powers of investigation and prosecution. These gaps made it necessary to revisit the law and make comprehensive amendments, which led to the passing of the Information Technology Amendment Act 2008. By the mid-2000s, the digital landscape had changed dramatically. Social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter had emerged. Smartphones had become common and online banking and e-commerce were growing rapidly. These advancements brought new challenges. Cyber terrorism, data breaches, online harassment, identity theft, and misuse of such digital information. It became clear that the Information Technology Act 2000 in its original form was no longer sufficient to handle the complexity of the digital world. Recognizing these challenges, the Government of India proposed a major overhaul of the Act. After several rounds of consultations with industry experts, lawyers, and policymakers, the Information Technology Amendment Act 2008 was passed by the Parliament. It received President's assent on February 5, 2009 and came into effect on 27 October 2009. The Amendment Act not only expanded the scope of original legislation but also introduced several new concepts, definitions, and offences to make the law more relevant to the modern technology. One of the most notable features of the amendment was emphasis on data protection and information security, with corporations and government agencies increasingly rely on digital data. Protecting sensitive information became crucial. The amendment introduced Section 43A, which made companies legally liable for negligence in handling such sensitive personal data. If a company failed to implement reasonable security practices and this failure caused wrongful loss or gain, it could be required to pay compensation to the affected individual. This provision made organizations accountable for maintaining proper cybersecurity standards. The amendment also replaced the earlier concept of digital signature with a broader and more technology-neutral term, electronic signature. This allowed the use of various authentication methods including biometrics, retinal scans, and other future technologies, ensuring that the law remained adaptable to technological advancements. In addition, the amendment recognized the role of intermediaries, entities like internet service providers, social media platforms, and the web hosting companies, and defined their responsibilities. Section 79 of the amended Act provided that intermediaries would not be held liable for the third-party content hosted on their platforms if they followed due diligence and complied with government guidelines. This was a critical development in shaping India's approach to online platform and freedom of expression. 2008 amendment also introduced new cyber offences such as cyber terrorism, Section 66F, which covers acts intended to threaten the sovereignty, integrity, or security of India using computer resources. Child pornography, Section 67B, which criminalizes the publication or transmission of material depicting minors in sexual acts. Identity theft, Section 66C, and cheating by personation, Section 66D, addressing online fraud and impersonation. Privacy violation, Section 66E, which penalize unauthorized capture or sharing of private images. The law also empowered inspectors, instead of only senior police officers, to investigate cyber offences, thereby speeding up the process of law enforcement. Additionally, it gave the central government the authority to block websites or online content that threatened national security, public order, or morality. Another important development was the formal recognition of the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team (CERT-EN) as the national nodal agency for cybersecurity. It was entrusted with monitoring, responding to, and issuing advisory on cybersecurity incidents, including hacking attempts, phishing attacks, and malware infections. The 2008 amendment transformed India's cyber law landscape. It modernized the existing framework, expanded the definition of cybercrime, and emphasized both individual privacy and corporate responsibility. It also reflected India's growing recognition of cyber threat as a matter of national security, especially in the wake of incidents like 2008 Mumbai attacks, which involved the use of digital communication networks. While the amendment was a major step forward, it also sparked debates about potential reach. Certain provisions, particularly Section 66A, which penalized sending offensive messages through electronic communication, were criticized for being vague and prone to misuse. This section was later struck down by the Supreme Court in Shreya Singhal versus Union of India case 2015, reaffirming the importance of free speech in cyberspace. Despite these debates, the Information Technology Amendment Act 2008 remains a cornerstone of India's cybersecurity and data protection framework. It represents India's transition from a reactive to a proactive approach in tackling cybercrime, ensuring that the nation grows digitally. It remains legally and ethically grounded. Thank you.